The horse that ran away. In a quiet valley surrounded by rolling hills and endless fields of gold, there lived an old farmer. His land was small, his home was simple, and his life was humble. He owned a few animals, a single plow, and one horse, a magnificent chestnut creature that was both his pride and his livelihood. Every morning the farmer rose before the sun, his hands weathered and brown from decades beneath the open sky. He tilled his fields with patience, not ambition. He planted seeds not for wealth but for sustenance. To the villagers who lived nearby, he seemed a man who had neither great fortune nor terrible misfortune. Just an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. But that would soon change. One morning, as the mist curled low over the valley, the farmer walked to the stable and found the gate wide open. The horse, his only horse, was gone. The tracks in the dirt led toward the hills, disappearing into the wilderness. The farmer stood in silence. His fields depended on that horse. Without it, he could not plow the soil, could not carry heavy loads, could not trade goods at the market. His livelihood had vanished overnight. When the neighbors heard the news, they rushed to his home. They shook their heads and pitied him. "What terrible luck," they said. "Now you'll surely struggle this season." The old man only looked toward the hills and nodded. His eyes were calm, his voice steady. Though he spoke little, the few who knew him well said he often murmured a quiet phrase when life turned uncertain. It was not a prayer, not exactly. More like a reminder. Maybe, maybe not. Days passed. The villagers continued their routines, whispering among themselves about the old farmer's misfortune. The fields began to dry in the sun. Without his horse, the farmer's pace was slow. But he did not complain. He did not curse fate or wallow in despair. Instead, he worked with what he had, his hands, his will, and his time. A week later, when the wind shifted and the scent of rain drifted through the valley, something extraordinary happened. At dawn, the farmer awoke to the sound of hooves outside. He stepped out of his small cottage and saw a cloud of dust rising at the edge of his field. His horse had returned, but it was not alone. Behind it ran a small herd, 6 wild horses, strong and untamed, following the chestnut stallion as if he were their leader. The farmer stood still, his heart quiet but full. He opened the gate and watched as the horses entered his land, circling, restless, magnificent. When the neighbors heard, they came running again. Their eyes were wide with wonder. "What unbelievable luck," they cried. "First your horse ran away, and now it's brought you 6 more. You are the luckiest man in the valley." But the old farmer said nothing. His eyes followed the herd as they settled by the stream. He remembered the days he had spent working alone, the silence of loss, and now this sudden abundance. He thought again of that quiet phrase, "Maybe, maybe not." For in his heart, he knew that fortune and misfortune were 2 sides of the same coin. What seems like loss may hide a blessing. What seems like blessing may hide a test. Life, he understood, had a rhythm of its own, one that no man could control. And so as the villagers celebrated his newfound luck, the farmer simply carried on. He built new fences. He began to train the wild horses, though they were fierce and unbroken. Day after day, he moved slowly and carefully, guiding them, earning their trust. But wild things are not easily tamed. One afternoon, as the sun fell low and golden over the valley, the farmer's only son, a young man strong and full of spirit, decided to ride one of the new horses. He had watched his father's patience, but he wanted to prove his own strength. He mounted the largest of the wild stallions, gripping its mane tightly as it bucked and kicked. For a brief moment, it seemed he might succeed. The villagers gathered near the fence, cheering him on, excitement lighting their faces. But the horse, wild and proud, reared suddenly and threw the young man high into the air. He landed hard on the ground, his leg twisting beneath him. The sound of the bone breaking echoed across the quiet valley. The crowd fell silent. The father ran to his son's side. The boy's face was pale with pain, his leg broken badly. The wild horse galloped off into the hills. That night, the cottage was dark and still. The farmer sat beside his son's bed, the boy's leg bound in splints. The neighbors came again, their voices heavy with sorrow. "What terrible luck," they said. "First your horse ran away, then you gained more, and now your son is crippled. Life has been cruel to you." The old man simply nodded, his eyes on the flickering candlelight. His expression was calm, not out of indifference but of understanding. He had seen enough of life to know that every event carried a hidden thread, one that only time could reveal. Maybe, maybe not. In the days that followed, his son could no longer help with the farm. The work became slower, harder, but still the old man rose before the sun. Still he plowed, still he carried water from the stream. The villagers pitied him once more, certain that his luck had truly run dry. But the wheel of life was not finished turning. One morning, weeks later, the sound of horses came again. This time not from the wild, but from the road. Soldiers rode into the valley, dust rising behind them. A great war had begun in the distant provinces, and the king had called every able-bodied young man to join the army. The soldiers gathered the village's sons one by one, leading them away to fight battles far from home. Every household wept. Mothers clung to their children. Fathers watched helplessly as their sons disappeared down the long dirt road. But the farmer's son was left behind. His broken leg made him unfit for war. And as the soldiers vanished into the horizon, the old man stood silently beside his son, the wind brushing through the fields. The villagers turned to look at him again, their faces pale with grief and realization. Perhaps they thought what seemed like misfortune was not misfortune at all. The old man looked out at the valley, the same valley that had seen his loss, his gain, and his pain, and whispered once more the words that had guided him through every turn of fate. Maybe, maybe not. And so, the story of the farmer spread quietly through the land. Some told it as a tale of patience, others as a lesson in wisdom. But those who truly listened understood that it was something deeper, an invitation to see life not as good or bad, lucky or unlucky, but simply as it is, a river that flows, carrying both joy and sorrow in the same current. The farmer tended his fields. His son healed slowly. The seasons changed, and the hills turned from gold to green again. But fate was not done yet, for even the calmest rivers hide storms beneath their surface. And soon, the farmer would learn that the true measure of luck is not found in what life gives or takes, but in how one learns to accept both.